Good evening. I'm Joe Hendrickson, as noted in your program for this evening, but more importantly than the note about my identity in the program is that I live across the street from Dave and Marcia and have so for the last 20 years. And that's really my claim to fame for tonight. We gather to honor and to remember Professor David Provorse and his wife Marcia. Your presence this evening is a testament to his legacy and impact on the Washburn University community. There are professional colleagues and former students from Northeast Kansas who join us here this evening to give witness to the many years of dedication and service that he offered to the mental health community. There are neighbors and friends from Topeka who know Dave only as the collective Dave and Marcia, literally, and I choose that word, overused word, very carefully, but literally side by side with his high school love and wife. We're joined here tonight by their daughter Amanda from Colorado and other family members from Nebraska. Dave and Marcia were people of deep but quiet Christian faith. But he was also thoroughly a partner in this university's endeavors, as were his colleagues and students. Those of us gathered here this evening are no doubt people who are also of deep faith, but also different faith traditions, or uncertain or ambiguous about religion, or decidedly of no faith at all. You are welcome here. For our purpose here this evening is to remember and to share stories about those that we care for, someone who touched our lives, and by remembering together, to add another flame to our light, to guide us in our way in the world. As a tip of the hat to Dave and Marcia's deep faith, I invite you to join me in offering a word of thanks to whatever it is that is holy for you. Holy One of many names, we thank you for touching us with two names, Dave and Marcia. One with all that is holy. Amen. Our first speaker is Dr. Cindy Turk, professor and chair of the psychology department.
Good evening. I had the pleasure of working with Dave for 20 years. He was part of the group of faculty that hired me. Dave worked at Washburn for 34 years. He was chair of the psychology department for 13 years. Chairs typically teach half-time and do half-time administrative work. That's what I do, and that's what all of the chairs in the College of Arts and Sciences do, as far as I know. But that's not what Dave did. When Dave was chair, he did his half-time administrative work, but he taught full-time in our master's program, with those extra classes being taught on a voluntary basis. I tell you this to try to help you understand how much Dave loved teaching. You know how people will say things like pursue your passion and get a job that you would do for free. Dave literally taught a lot more than he had to for over a decade for free, simply because of the joy and meaning he found in teaching. Dave and I taught a 2-course sequence in adult psychotherapy techniques, informally called Tech 1 and Tech 2 in our department. Dave had been teaching Tech 2 for years when I arrived at Washburn. When I arrived, he was very generous with sharing his materials and telling me how he structured his course. and I modeled my Tech 1 course after his Tech 2 course. Over the years, I refined the course based on my own ideas and feedback from students. But that said, whenever I would refine my course to make it even more similar to Dave's course, the better my student evaluations became. So what I'm saying is that Dave helped make me a better teacher. Dave was a mentor to me in other ways as well. Novel ethical situations will inevitably arise. Dave taught our ethics course. He was always the first person that I would turn to when an ethical issue arose. I always left his office feeling less stressed and more confident about the appropriate course of action. I imagine this is how his students must have felt after leaving his office after supervision. Similarly, as department chairs, challenging and stressful administrative issues will inevitably arise, and it was a luxury having a former department chair down the hall for advice and support. I nominated Dave for Washburn's prestigious Ned Fleming Teaching Award in 2010. He deserved it, and he won. I went back and read the student letters that I submitted with that nomination. I want to read excerpts from 3 of them. One graduate of our MA program wrote, "Dr. Provorse not only taught me the fundamentals of theories of psychology, ethics and diversity, and therapy techniques, he also taught me about the importance of life. When my grandmother was terminally ill, he supported and encouraged my decision to focus on my time with her. I made the decision to momentarily pause my thesis. While I was embarrassed for taking so long to complete my thesis, Dr. Provorse repeatedly reminded me that it was my project and I would finish in my own time. He also reminded me that he took longer than most students to finish his dissertation, which encouraged me to finish my thesis. Dr. Provorse never once made me feel inadequate for working at my own pace, and after each thesis meeting or email, he praised my hard work. His unconditional support and compassion are things I will never forget." Another graduate wrote, "He had an amazing sense of humor in a lecture format. I believe he shared that while an undergraduate, he had taken some theater courses. He used these skills to enlighten classes, stimulate curiosity, and help those students who are more visual learners retain the concepts and information presented. Dr. Provorse always spoke of adding tools to our clinical toolbox. I believe a unique tool that Dr. Provorse possesses is his sense of humor and willingness to, quote, embarrass himself in front of the class to make a point about the lecture material." Another graduate wrote, "Today, as I use the skills learned during my graduate years, I am reminded of the instruction Dr. Provorse provided. To assure that I would remain an ethical psychologist, he once suggested that in times of question, I ask myself, if my grandmother or Dr. Provorse were looking over my shoulder, what would they say? I continue to ask myself this today to remain a responsible clinician. Too often to admit when a peer asks me a clinical question, the first thing that comes to mind is, what would Provorse do? And I often find myself saying to colleagues, as Provorse says, I greatly appreciated my time in the Washburn Psychology program, and especially the time that Dr. Provorse invested in developing the skill sets, ethical principles, and professionalism that I continue to use today to improve the lives of the clients that I work with." After I submitted this nomination, I gave copies to Dave of all the student letters. A few days later, he came up to me and thanked me. He said that he'd read them all and that they had made him cry. The letters from the students meant more to him than the award. Dave loved his students, and they loved him back. I see so many of his students here today. You are all part of his legacy. His love for our students led him to make the personal financial. During this past fall semester, Dave was approved to do a phased retirement. He was going to complete teaching full-time this year, teach half-time next year, and then fully retire. Our administrative assistant, Teresa Young, graduate student Katrina Escobar, and I worked directly with Dave to plan an end-of-the-year retirement banquet for him that would involve inviting every master's student that he had taught to the party. He viewed it as a chance to connect with and celebrate with the students that he loved. He was adamant about wanting no retirement gifts. Rather, he wanted alumni to make donations to the Master's Scholarship Fund that he had founded. Katrina Escobar wrote an article for our annual newsletter about Dr. Provorse's career and impending retirement. She met with him so that he could shape what was in the article. That award that I had talked about earlier, he didn't mention it. Serving as department chair for 13 years, he didn't mention that either. So what did he talk about as he looked back on his own career? He talked about teaching 6 different graduate courses and 3 clinical practicums, accounting for nearly 1/3 of the master's program curriculum. He talked about chairing over 60 master's theses. He talked about how early in his career he did work that supported the YWCA Center for Safety and Empowerment. He talked about being a board member for the National Association for Rural Mental Health. He talked about his 30-year affiliation with Crosswinds Counseling and Wellness. At Crosswinds, he provided therapy services, conducted trainings, supervised clinical staff, and performed parenting evaluations. He talked about his work with the Athletic Academic Support Program at KU, where he conducted assessments for athletes referred for ADHD and learning disability evaluations. He talked about his supervision of graduate students conducting mental skills for performance enhancement groups for the women's soccer, softball, and basketball teams, as well as the men's and women's track and field and tennis teams. He talked about completing 40 marathons himself and teaching a 4-credit marathon class through the kinesiology department for 23 years. He took great pride in the fact that he guided nearly 500 people in achieving their bucket list goal of completing the 26.2-mile marathon. I want to expand on that last point about completing 40 marathons. Dave always had a life and interests outside of Washburn. He ran marathons, he biked, he did long road trips on his motorcycle, he played guitar, he often went to his cabin in his home state of Nebraska. He and his wife often went to Colorado to visit their daughter Amanda, her husband, and their 2 children. He traveled regularly. He and his wife spent time with their many siblings and friends. His wife was his high school sweetheart and lifelong best friend. He told the story of going out of state to school but only lasting a semester. He had to return home to Nebraska and go to school there because he missed Marcia so much. Dave loved his work, worked hard, did high-quality work, and was fully present when at work. But work was not his entire life. And I think in this way he modeled for students how to live a life as a professional in an occupation that has the potential to cause burnout. I want to end by echoing the most common words used by our master's students when thanking Dave each spring at our end-of-the-year banquet. Thank you, Dr. Provorse, for your wisdom and compassion. And I'd like to now introduce Dr. Laura Stevenson. Laura is now retired, but in her career at Washburn, she taught in the psychology department, served as department chair, served as dean of College of Arts and Sciences, and served as the interim vice president of academic affairs. She was part of the group of faculty that hired Dave.
It's wonderful to see all these faces out here and know that everyone here has such fond memories and feelings about Dave and Marcia. And I want to just start by thanking Dr. Turk, Dr. Hendrickson, and Teresa Young for all their work in putting this together to celebrate the lives of Dave and Marcia. I was fortunate to have the opportunity to attend the service in Grand Island, Nebraska for Dave and Marcia, and that was a beautiful celebration of their lives and helped me to better understand and appreciate Dave and Marcia and also appreciate our loss. I really struggled with what to say today about Dave and Marcia, and it felt even harder today just thinking about the loss of them and then amidst all of the tragic events that are going on in the world of late. And I just had this random association that crossed my mind this morning, actually, and it was a movie title from the 60s. And I really shouldn't say this because I haven't even ever seen the movie, and so it may not fit at all. But what stuck with me is the title of the movie. And it was a movie in the 60s. It was called The Loneliness of the Long-Distance Runner. And I think what struck me about that title is, long-distance runner, and you think of Dave, but it seemed to me sort of the antithesis of Dave. And if I was to name the film in Dave style, it would be The Community of the Long-Distance Runner. As Dr. Turk mentioned, in addition to teaching psychology courses, Dave taught a course in the kinesiology department on how to run a marathon. And it was a popular course attracting students and auditors, athletes and wannabe athletes, and they would do regular group runs. I'd see Dave and his students running around campus early in the morning as I arrived for work. And then the final exam for the course was to travel somewhere in the United States and run a marathon. And the successful completion rate among his students was phenomenal. And I'd hear students over and over tell me about what a transformational experience the course was. He was a coach, a teacher, a guide, a role model, a mentor, and provided for the needs of those who were trying to achieve their goals. And I think, as I think about it, I think one of the most important elements that Dave brought to the marathon course was a sense of community. By training, Dave was not only a clinical psychologist, but a community psychologist with a specialty in rural mental health. Community psychology looks beyond the individual and considers the community, the social network, the environmental context in which people live. It's a field that focuses on social problems and injustices, respect for human diversity, emphasizes collaboration and partnerships, prevention, and the promotion of wellness and strengths. And that community perspective was one of the common threads in the amazing tapestry of Dave's life. A month ago, at the celebration in Grand Island of the lives of Dave and Marcia, it was in a church, a hometown church, that was packed with their families, friends, former students, colleagues. And as I sat in that church, it really struck me that this is where the roots of his community focus started. In his quiet, determined way, Dave brought that community focus to Washburn and led the psychology department to broader community involvement. He instituted mental health screening days for the entire campus community. He worked with student athletes on both performance and psychological issues. He consulted and led research efforts at numerous agencies, such as those addressing domestic violence, substance abuse, the public schools, churches, prisons, and of course, community mental health centers. And in all these efforts, Dave also involved his students and enhanced their academic experiences. Dave excelled at figuring out what was needed and what was no longer needed in our curriculum, and he found creative and effective ways to teach. He did so much to shape our graduate psychology training. He took on the areas where we were weakest and made them areas of strength. He developed coursework in group therapy, in ethics, in suicidal risk, in serving underrepresented groups and psychotherapy techniques. Dave cared deeply about providing appropriate services for vulnerable groups. While I was chair, the graduate students selected an outstanding faculty member for an award, and to no one's surprise, it was Dave. And it's very interesting to me to hear Cindy talk and the student remarks that she shared with you, because they're very similar to the remarks I remember. And I remember the students who were presenting the award remarking about how whenever they were having a challenging moment with a client, they could hear Dave's voice and words guiding them on what to say or do. And I understood what they meant because he was a trusted colleague whose counsel I valued, and I would hear his words as well. I also want to mention Dave's impact on the undergraduate program. He was the impetus for the mastery approach to teaching introductory psychology. Introductory psychology is a notoriously hard freshman course. And the mastery approach that he pioneered for us not only gave students the opportunity to practice more with the material with repeated testing, but it also gave them easy access to tutors, broke material down into smaller units, and standardized content across sections. Our success rates improved, and his initiatives were continued and expanded upon by the department. Just like long-distance running, learning psychology requires practice, and community helps as well. I also think about the long-distance runner when I think about Dave's persistence in playing the long game. At the service in Grand Island, I learned that Dave first spotted Marcia in the stands at a track meet when they were in high school and asked his friend, "Who's that?" Well, we all know where that led. And they were high school sweethearts, and their love story is both an enduring and an endearing one. I learned about Dave's musical talent when he started playing guitar and singing his witty and insightful original compositions at our psychology banquets. And at one of them, he explained that he taught himself to play guitar while he was laid up for several months in high school with mononucleosis. And one of the first songs he wrote was a love song to Marcia, and he sang that for us. And, you know, one of the things that struck me is that quiet determination to master an instrument while in isolation. And I really came to appreciate that during COVID when I tried to learn the guitar. And believe me, it was not a success. It was through his performances at our psychology banquets that I also began to see his amazing sense of humor, his wit, and his musical talent. And I'm so excited that we're going to be hearing one of his songs today. And it will give you a sense of his wit and his insight. I told him once that I thought we needed to compile all of his songs. And he suggested, well, we should do a CD and sell it as a way to raise money for psychology scholarships. And I truly regret that we didn't get that done. Dave's persistence and determination was also evident in his pursuit of his own psychology degree. He had started out as a computer science major before switching to psychology. As is common, he was rejected by doctoral programs. What did he do next? Well, he made himself more competitive. He spent years pursuing clinical and research experience and was eventually admitted to his top choice doctoral university, the University of Nebraska. His dissertation ran into numerous obstacles, including the death of his advisor, but he doggedly continued and ultimately successfully completed. Throughout these and other major obstacles, both personal and professional, he regrouped and he kept running. I think one of the things that kept him going was the deep love and joy in his life. In addition to Marcia, he relished parenthood and delighted in Amanda and all her accomplishments, even if it meant learning to cheer for K-State, in addition to his beloved Nebraska. He and Marcia were so proud and found such happiness in being grandparents to Jax and Leo. And whether it was family trips to the lake in Nebraska, football games, or motorcycle treks to Sturgis, Dave and Marcia found pleasures in the world around them. Dave and Marcia extended the warmth of their friendship to me. Even though I didn't see her often, Marcia always seemed to know what was going on with me and my world. She was personable, discerning, and so engaging. She had her own career as a longtime office manager, but also supported Dave's work at Washburn in many unseen ways. They were both the kind of people who always reached out to help and always tried to make things better. When I think about Dave, I think about the ways to battle the loneliness of the long-distance runner. And I think in our own ways, each of us is a long-distance runner. For many of us, we think about quitting because the journey feels long, we're out of breath, our bodies are sore, and there's no end in sight. But Dave taught by example. You can keep going and finish the race. And you do it by surrounding yourself with the things that matter. It's building community. It's family and friends. It's having goals and building support along the way. It's steadfast persistence and practice even when there's obstacles. It's commitment to making things better and caring for others. It's also adding laughter, music, fun, and most of all, love. I think those are the things that keep the long-distance runner going. Dave and Marcia knew that, and they would want each of us to keep going and doing good along the way. Thank you.
I would now like to introduce Becca Livgren. She is a graduate of our master's program and now serves as one of our internship supervisors. She also serves on our master's advisory board. Today she's going to sing one of the songs that Dr. Provorse wrote and play it in his style of performance. And that style will be familiar to the students and alumni in attendance. She and fellow MA graduate Aubrey Dauber also wrote a song of their own in honor of Dr. Provorse, and she's going to play that as well. The lyrics to both songs are included in your program. When Dr. Provorse would perform, he would routinely supply the audience with the lyrics.
I'm super glad that she said his style, so that you're not just like, what are you? I know I'm not a good singer. I know that. And I barely play guitar. But I wanted to share a short story about the first time I actually met Dr. Provorse. Was, side story, I found out that my husband and I were pregnant with my first, probably within 2 days, that I also found out I got accepted into the master's program. Hey, yeah, they know all the story. But he sent me an email after I messaged him and Dr. Turk, and sent me an email saying that he wanted me to come up and introduce myself and blah, blah, blah. So I did, and I went up and I said, hey, my name's Becca, and his first words were, are you related to Carrie Livgren? And I was like, yes, I am. And that was our introduction. So yeah, you guys know his song styles and all that. It's pretty fun. He asked me, I think the first time to play with him, I told him I was a drummer, and if he ever needed a drummer, I would love to drum. So he asked me to drum with him, and I showed up to the grad banquet, and I had my drumsticks, because he said that's all I needed. That was it. And so I said, okay, great. And I show up, he's got his guitar, he's, messing with the chords. We hadn't practiced, by the way, if that wasn't evident. And I said, hey, do you have like a drum set or like anything? And he was like, no. Did I miss something? And he said, there's a trash can lid, you could play on that. So I played on a trash can lid. So this is the song he had asked me to play with him at his retirement party, and we were called Tiber Tears. That was our band name. So anyway, here's the first song. Hello, it's me. I've been staring at this waste administration manual since 3 bronze-scaled scores, composite indices, discontinue and reversal rules, they make no sense to me. Hello, can you feel me? I just failed my second attempt on techniques checkout number 3. Do you truly understand what this means? Getting a C on my last quiz makes me feel like such a fool. There's such a difference between seem to spend half my life. I fear I might have to run away and hide. Just can't take notes from those old PowerPoint slides anymore. Hello, how are you? It's been typical for me to tell you about my day. I'm sorry, now I have ethical responsibilities. So there's not much I can tell you due to confidentiality. It's no secret completing this master's degree. It's gonna take the best of me. I'm living the grad school life. Don't get no sleep, I'm always tired. The TAs tell me to practice self-care. My planner tells me I ain't got a minute to spare. When I review my syllabi, sometimes all I can do is cry. Stay up all night reading all the way through. Before one assignment's finished, another comes due. Hanging with my cohort tonight, gonna practice till we get it right. 4 chapters I should read before tomorrow's class. If this checkout's not passed, they're gonna kick my ass out the door. Out the door. Okay, that was fun. So this next song, my friend Aubrey and I wrote it, and when I was saying that Dr. Provorse had asked me to play drums for him at the retirement party, he also asked me if I would share a story, an impactful story or a funny story. And the first story that popped to my mind was I was a first-year grad student, like 2 months in, and hadn't seen anybody. And there was a student in crisis, and we needed Dr. Provorse. And so I was down in the clinic, and there was like the scuttlebutt, it was edgy. And we were waiting, and we were waiting, and we were waiting on Dr. Provorse to show up. And in my head, I'm like, where is he? This person's in crisis. And he showed up, and I just will not ever forget how he showed up and the way that I felt so high and very anxious about what was going to happen. And I watched him saunter down the stairs. It's like long steps, sauntered. And then I thought he was turning in. Nope, he went to the vending machine. And everybody know what he got. Correct. That you win. Yes, correct. Mountain Dew. But I just thought, wow, this is a complete crisis for this person. In a good way. Like, the story's good, but complete crisis for this person, and he is just so calm and collected, and that is how I want to be. So this song is dedicated to him and to all of his students who are part of his legacy, as well as innumerable family systems and countless generations changed because of how he taught us to help save people's lives. Step one, you say we need to talk, sit down. Tell me about your self-harm thoughts. Client stares a hole through you. You think, what would Provorse do? You remember the scale goes 0 to 10. Ask them gently where they fit in. They sigh and say ideation's a 7. Ask yourself where would preparation, possibility, attempts, experience, impulsivity. What is their social circle like? Let's meet tomorrow. I know you're worth saving your life. Let them know that you're concerned, but remember they have autonomy. The power lies in the secret, so we won't recapitulate. Write down a list of coping skills, the things he knows he does love, and pray to God he keeps it and doesn't trash it on the way out of your door. I'm not scared of your dark, I'll sit with you and be unwavering in my presence. I know life is hard and you're not alright, but just by being here, at least a small part of you wants to save your life. He begins to raise his voice. Lower yours, drop your sword down slow, reorient to the task at hand. Finish up that safety plan. Wait, he's fighting me on a safety plan? Dr. Provorse said 5 and above gets a safety plan, and he's a 7. That means he gets a safety plan. Whew. Okay, where were we? Who are the people on your phone that make you feel not all alone? And here's some crisis numbers. I need one reason for living from you, please. I know I'm still new at this therapist gig. My goal one day is to walk into session the Provorse way, Mountain Dew in hand, calm and collected, fully aware of my plan. 15 minutes late to every meeting in life. But in a crisis, he's always right on time. Thanks.
Well, silly people, it says closing remarks, but that's just not right. There is an old saw that says you don't give a professor a room and you don't give a pastor a live microphone. And so there you have it. I'd say probably most of you here in this room knew Dave in his role here at Washburn as professor and mentor, or in your professional interactions with him as a mental health colleague. And if you were acquainted with his wife, Marcia, at all, well, first off, you were just incredibly fortunate. And it may have been through him or through his work, perhaps. It's my pleasure to join in some of these other stories in reminding you that indeed Dave did have a life beyond academia and solo presentations and workshops and the buzz of fluorescent lights and whatnot. There are quite a number of us here tonight from the community at large, neighbors and friends who were touched by Dave and Marcia as they lived among us too. my perspective is bound by my situation. It's a very specific one. As I mentioned, I live directly across the street from Dave and Marcia. Our kitchen bay window lines up with their kitchen bay window. Our mailboxes line up directly across from one another, and so do our driveways. When we would chat, as we would do not nearly as often as I would have liked, but probably more than Dave had time to indulge, it was often in the middle of the street. We do not live on a cul-de-sac. The choice was not always smart. I got to know Dave well enough to recognize his grin. It was more than a tight-lipped stretch of the mouth, but not a toothy smile either. It always indicated to me that something back there was churning. I thought it most likely was something funny, and I was always sure that it was something dry, but only half the time did he ever get it out. That grin got me to thinking just a little bit and wondering if Dave had left us words for tonight. He might have chosen some kind of wit and wisdom from the comings and goings around the house, sort of like what we've heard a little bit of this WWPD I heard a few minutes ago. Maybe something like that. I'm not sure. Well, here is what I might have observed out of my bay window. Not that I'm a creep or anything, but our curtain does have kind of a permanent little crease in it. I've watched Dave and Marcia out of that little crease for about 20 years now. No, it's being a good neighbor. I'm pretty sure that they have, in that time, never had a vehicle that was not black. Pickup, SUV, motorcycle. I can't remember absolutely, but I think the tandem bicycle. Now, a mental health professional should know that there is baggage that comes with an obsession like that. The neighbors will talk. To the north, to the north, to the south. There are vehicles parked in driveways that are red, blue, silver, green, brown, and in the Provorse driveway there is black, 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 and black. Dave and Marcia remind us to find what we like and go for it. Be yourself. Be yourself. Second, I think I would observe out my bay window that it's okay to be a little crazy. Now, that actually is a lesson I learned not from my bay window, but from my driveway. I mentioned that we line up driveway to driveway. I don't think it's really any secret that Dave's eyesight was not exactly 100%, especially his peripheral vision. Very shortly after we moved in, these 20 years ago, we learned that when Dave was on his way somewhere, Washburn University, he backed out of his driveway with authority. Now, never look back may be a good therapeutic approach. I do not know. It probably is a good mantra for some situations, but in a car it is, a little crazy. Maybe the idea is to let others look out for you once in a while. That could be. I know that when I leave home, and I believe that when my wife leaves home, we have learned to look left once and to look right once and to look behind us 3 times. If I even see Dave and Marcia's garage door going up, I will not take my foot off the brake because I have learned that I cannot beat him to the street. The saving grace out of all of this is that it doesn't matter where they are in the street. Dave or Marcia or both of them, whoever is in the vehicle, it doesn't matter. They are always going to wave and they are always going to smile. And it's not that Nebraska country kind of a wave, with one finger. It's a wave. And that makes it all okay. Be a little crazy. Third, I have observed being meticulous is good, even if it's borderline unconventional. I've always wondered if Dave kept his office desk like he keeps his lawn. If so, there is nothing on his desk. Not a scrap of paper, not a paper clip, not a pencil. Dave, and by extension Marcia, was a stickler about that yard. I know the sound of that mower from my recliner. At the height of the mowing season, I have known them to mow their yard every other day. From my bay window, I could never, ever see the flower of a dandelion sticking its head up. Never. Rarely did a leaf stray onto the grass for very long. Not even long enough for the wind to blow it out. A neighbor wondered to me when we were talking about this, how did Dave talk Marcia into cutting the grass and watering and weeding along with him? But the fact of the matter is, as we've already heard tonight, they were both so athletic that it seemed like nothing for them to get out there and just take care of things. They could cut their entire lawn in less time than it took me to go out and fill up the mower and haul the mower around to the front yard and put on my yard shoes. They were machines with it. I often wondered if they sneaked a peek out of their bay window. They wondered at my natural yard. And then, of course, when the snow would come, there was no snowblower in Dave and Marcia's garage. No, Dave must have had this Nebraska thing going. I never understood that. But he was a maniac with a snow shovel. He would not stop until his driveway was down to the concrete. Not a bit of snow remaining. That was so ingrained in the neighborhood that, at this last snowstorm, 3 weeks ago or so now, it was so ingrained that the son of a neighbor who years ago was in high school with Amanda came by and cleaned that driveway, Dave and Marcia's driveway, just exactly like Dave would have done it. Now that is a tribute to someone who understands what it is to be meticulous, even to the point of being unconventional. Fourth, I know that out of my bay window, I have learned that it's good to get out there. For many of the neighbors, Dave and Marcia were the very first ones to show up on a doorstep with a loaf of friendship bread when someone moved in. My wife and I always knew when it was the end of a spring semester, when all of those runners came right by the house, the cars, 2 black vehicles, a pickup and an SUV, were backed into the end of the driveway to block it off, tailgate down, trunk up, 5-gallon water coolers in the back, ready to welcome all of the runners as they came by, and they all would stand around out in the front yard and visit, because that's just what you did with Dave and Marcia. They came to that finish line. I think it was the black mailbox, which also was black, by the way. And they would hang around for the morning and just enjoy each other. Just get out there. And then I would say, Dave and Marcia would probably say, be a friend and receive a friend. You know you have found your one true love in life if you can ride a tandem bicycle together and not fall off. As I mentioned earlier, they really did do everything together, and we've heard that from the other speakers tonight too. Bicycling, hopping on that motorcycle, trips to Nebraska, trips to Colorado, yard work together. One of the last times I talked to them both at the same time, which wasn't really all that often since we would pass and talk separately a lot. It was back in October, I remember, because I had walked across the street to give them a hard time. They were up on ladders near the front door of the house, and I wanted to go over and accuse them, jokingly, of putting their Christmas lights up early, which really wasn't that much of a stretch because they were known to get things done before everybody else in the neighborhood at times. It turned out that they were actually cleaning their gutters. But the thing was, they were smiling and chatting with each other throughout this whole process, and I actually was disturbing them from their little lighthearted conversation. They could find a way to be friends with each other and find friends no matter where they were and what they did. And so I think out of my little bay window, I learned a few things just by watching the neighborhood. Be yourself. Be a little crazy. Be meticulous if you want to be, as long as if you want to go as far as being unconventional, so be it. Get out there. Be a friend. Take a few friends into your life. But all of these stories that we've heard tonight, they're just snapshots of time. They don't take in the whole scope of anybody's life, but maybe they're just the snapshot we need on this night as we remember a remarkable man, a wonderful couple, great neighbors, and friends. When you entered tonight, or maybe they were on your chairs, I think it was as you were entering tonight, you were given a small candle. Marcia would probably think that these were pretty. Dave might mutter something or come up with a song about how safety in public places has left us with plastic and batteries and things that do not drip and do not smoke and do not ignite. Yeah, I don't know. I should probably point out to you, since there was a little bit of confusion at my table, at least from the person who sits to my left, about exactly how these work. Just to be sure, when you turn it over, there's a little switch, and the switch to turn these on, you poke the switch towards the center of the bottom, in towards the cap that hides the battery. Sometimes these can be kind of confusing. Don't do it yet. Oh, yeah, you haven't been told to. No. I'm in charge. Don't do it. That's how you work it. There are a lot of reasons why religions around the world have turned to fire and flame and light when they are noting the passing of loved ones. Flames, they dance like they're alive, and smoke rises in shapes like ethereal bodies, and light penetrates like the eyes of the living, and heat pulses like a fever. When you turn on your candle, and yeah, okay, now I've given you enough time so that I'm back in control. Turn on your candle. We've been sitting long enough. If you're able, why don't you stand in your spot with your candle? Why don't you hold it, let's see, arbitrarily. Let's say hold it about nose high. How about that? Thank you for at least, that. You're here tonight because Dave and Marcia's light was shared with you at some point. Now it's up to you. Let me invite you to take your light and share it. Share your light with somebody next to you. Yes, share your light. Pass your light to any person who is right next to you. Yes, some of you are literally going across the room. But we're not done. Because Marcia's light, that was for Dave, Marcia's light also was shared throughout this community. And I invite you to take that light that also has been shared with each of us and share that one also with someone different who is near you, so that the light goes out and beyond us. And now, if you would, just as high as is comfortable for you and your shoulders, lift your light and hear these closing words. Holy One, light giver, banish the darkness of our world as we share our light one by one. Holy One, light giver, banish the darkness that's within us as we hold our light in our hand. Holy One, light giver, thank you for the lights we once knew as Dave and Marcia. May the lights they shared be always among us and be always among the lights that we share. Amen. Thank you for joining us tonight. Good night.